I'd like to call the Monday, September 11th board meeting to order. Roll call.
Ms. Nazario.
Here.
Ms. Washington.
Here.
Dr. Ballard.
Here.
Mr. Ferguson.
Here.
Mr. Sturgill.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. If we could, just take a moment to bow our heads in a moment of silence in remembrance of those in New York City from 22 years ago, as well as all the other tragedies that are taking place nationally and around the world. Thank you.
Recognition of visitors.
I'm going to screw the name up, so I'm going to read it, but I did it. I'd like to invite to the podium Debbie Melda and Ron Campatella. Is that close? I'm sorry, Reno Campatella. All right. From OSBA.
Well, thank you. So Reno and Debbie from the Ohio School Board Association. For everybody knows, the Ohio School Board Association probably represents all the public schools in Columbus. So like the teachers union, we're down there in Columbus fighting the same issues as you are. So we do it on the school board. We're very proud that Lorain City is a member. And board members, we thank you for your service, especially the board members who are your student achievement liaisons and legislative liaisons and all the extra time and preparation for meetings and the board committees that you go on. We appreciate that on behalf of the Ohio School Board Association. Each year at our spring conference and our fall conference this year, we recognize board members who have done just a little bit extra or the call of duty. And one of your board members, out of 3,400 board members there are in the state of Ohio, probably less than 80 have won the following two awards. Board members who have gone more training and board members who actually took a test, a cognitive test for board members. And Barbie Washington, congratulations, you have earned both those awards, which is very hard to do. And on behalf of the Ohio School Board Association Northeast Region, we thank you for your hard work and having a chance to talk to you today. We're going to recruit her for our executive committee. Our executive committee is like one or two board members from every county. So Barbie has agreed to join our group. So congratulations, Barbie. Let me get a picture.
Excellent.
Smile and say public education. All right, thanks. Thank you.
Wait. Oh, we're waiting for Mr. back.
Thanks for having us.
No, thank you. And I'd like to thank Barbie for her leadership. She does attend some conferences here and there. Always taking the lead and appreciate your leadership, and I mean that sincerely. Reno, I think I've known you now for 10 or 12 years, we talked about. I apologize, I still can't say your name. But Debbie as well, I appreciate the hard fight you put on in Columbus for us on a regular basis and all that you do, and for making the ride up to cheer for somebody who's clearly deserving. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. First hearing of the public. We need to approve the minutes from the August 28th meeting.
So move.
Support.
Roll call.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Ms. Nazario.
Yes.
Ms. Washington.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Any old business? Reports and recommendation of the treasurer.
I have items 8.01 and 8.02 for approval.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Washington.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Ms. Nazario.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Reports and recommendation of the superintendent.
Thank you, Mrs. Zario. I'd like to, before I get started with my issues, I'd like to invite Pat Coleman to the stand. And we had a lot of questions about ChatGPT and all the different versions of artificial intelligence and what that means to us. challenges for the students, benefits for the students, challenges for our staff, and benefits for our staff. And I just kind of asked Pat to walk us through briefly the big picture ideas, what's going on, and of course, if the board has any questions, please do.
Absolutely. Give me just a second to coordinate with our audio visual. There we go. Good. Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about what it's probably an understatement to position this as just groundbreaking technology. Generative AI and Chat GPT, we'll try and keep it short, but I do want to give everyone an idea of what this is, what it can do, some introductory, I think, implications for us as a school setting, and kind of where we're at on it right now. So I'll start here with a quick ed tech history lesson, and Ross, this was your analogy, but it was a good one, so I'm attributing credit. In a lot of ways, it can be likened to a new and slightly improved version of a calculator. So real quick, going back to 1958, that's what a calculator looked like. Weighed about 50 pounds and was cost prohibitive, to say the least, in terms of it showing up in schools, and it was a non-entity for educators to deal with in the classroom, or maybe worry about whether kids might be using that to undermine their ability to do their times tables, that sort of thing. Fast forward about 20 years, calculators got a lot smaller, they got a lot cheaper, and we started to see them in schools. And educators started to wrestle a little bit with what that could mean and what that looks like. And there were pros and cons, there were arguments for and against. At the time, there were a team of math educators that felt like it might be something that will undermine kids' ability to, again, perform that mental math and rudimentary arithmetic. But in pretty short order, now we're fast forwarding here to 1983, which is crazy to think that's 40 years ago. Well, that's just me. But calculators started to look like that, and they were in every school and in most secondary math classrooms. And we turned the corner. As educators, we started to realize that whereas, it can provide shortcuts with respect to 43 times 62, it also can make high-level, complex, advanced mathematical concepts more accessible to a wider group of kids. And today, calculators are part of just about every high-level math class in a high school or college setting, and certainly below that as well. So calculators now look something like this. So again, that was 40 years ago. In terms of weight, it's about what your cell phone weighs. Chat GPT, and we'll talk about what that means when we use that phrase here in just a second. It's free. Relatively speaking, it does mean you have to hand over your cell phone number and your email address. Some folks don't consider that free. I get that, but it doesn't cost any dollars and cents. So a lot of our kids have this on their phones and are starting to play around with it. What does that mean? First of all, let's just talk generative AI. Okay, generative AI is really advanced technology. It's a very advanced mathematical model that will create new content. So it will create images, it can create a song, it can write a story, it can create text with very little direct human input. The only human input it needs is a prompt, is a request to produce X, Y, and Z, and then providing some clarifications around specifics with respect to what you want. So high level, we can compare generative AI to something like social media. Now, the most prevalent, the most prominent form of generative AI, the kind of brand name platform, is what's called ChatGPT. So this might be kind of the Facebook or Twitter of generative AI. It is language-based generative AI, generative artificial intelligence, that basically understands how words and phrases are put together in all sorts of contexts, and it has the ability to survey an almost unquantifiable set of databases at an almost unquantifiable rate of speed, such that it can address, in a pretty sophisticated way, and we'll show you in just a second, and pretty accurately, some pretty high-level prompts and requests for information. So in terms of high-level how this works, the best analogy I heard is it's very comparable to predictive text. So we all type emails, and when we get about halfway through a sentence, when we type an email, it starts asking is this how you want to, is this a sentence you're trying to write? So it gives us 3 or 4 words. When we're going to type in a text, predictive text will ask us if this is how we want to finish that particular word based on the first couple characters and the context by which those characters are being entered. So ChatGPT just does that same thing. It just does it exceedingly faster, exceedingly better. And so, without further ado, feel like seeing is believing with ChatGPT. So let me just throw in a couple prompts just so you can see this if you haven't seen it before. I'm going to start with my daughter really got me onto this. She was a freshman last year at Ohio State, and she was struggling with, she's a math major at Ohio State and was taking her first proof space class. And again, we talked about the calculator example and kids using it for 8 times 7 or 62 times 42. And I think around our age range, when we got into college, we started to use programmable calculators to potentially solve algebraic functions. Now the stuff can solve pretty sophisticated algebraic proofs. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. And I'm not going to pretend to understand any of that. I won't put Jay on the spot. I know he's our resident mathematician. He could probably explain it better than I could. But I will say Dr. Fowler at Ohio State University signed off on this proof, and the answer to this proof being pretty impressive and pretty groundbreaking. So I put that up there to say I don't think there's a math problem we can throw out there that our kids can't pretty quickly and reliably generate an answer to. And if you stop and think about that, that's really interesting. Few more examples. Let's not stay in the math world. Again, I know I started off focusing on calculators. We're going to ask it to write a 1,000-word essay on the theme of justice versus law in the novel To Kill a Mockingbird. So here we go. And I'm cutting and pasting these just to save time. But with some of these, it's generating some of these essays about as quickly as I could type in that prompt. I might beat it by a little bit, but conclusion. Okay, a lot of implications there. Now, we can adjust the complexity. We can adjust the length. We're going to do the same thing. We want 500 words now. And we want it to be written at a 9th grade level. And again, I'm just going to go ahead for time. I'm going to stop generating. You're starting to get an idea. So yeah, it can write papers. It can also make our work as adults far more efficient. And so let's look at this. Let's look at this from a planning perspective. Throw this prompt in here. Provide 5 days of discussion notes, complete with citations from the text, along with 5 final essay options for the novel To Kill a Mockingbird. So again, in terms of how we organize and frame our thinking, in terms of instructional delivery, there are a lot of significant advantages. We played around quite a bit in a workshop earlier in the year with respect to lesson planning. Generate a lesson plan that's rich in UDL principles around a specific standard. Ratios and proportions, 6.RP.A.1, 6th grade math standard, that sort of thing. It produces pretty good stuff. And you can see that. Last one, then we'll get to some implications. So let's just say we got a response to one of those essays. I'm going to cut and paste it in there. Right? Go back to the top. At the top here, we're going to ask ChatGPT to provide feedback on the following essay with attention to creating a more formal and academic tone. The title of the essay is The Impact of Racial Prejudice in To Kill a Mockingbird. And again, so it's going to assess this essay and give us some feedback. Here we go. So again, we kind of face with like, wow, almost untold computing power in terms of how it can benefit our students and how it could potentially undermine our students used the wrong way, how it can help us, how it can potentially undermine some of what we're trying to do with our kiddos done the wrong way. We have to examine where we are in this. So we are not blocking ChatGPT. I did survey 29 local technology directors. 27.6, the blue slice of the pie there. They are choosing to currently block it. We're part of the red group there, 72.4%. And so let's talk a little bit more about that. Why aren't we taking that reflexive stance of blocking the calculator in 1975 or blocking ChatGPT? Three words came to mind as I thought about this: access, ethics, and effectiveness. So first of all, in terms of access, we are a district that believes our kids deserve access to the best possible tools, the best possible resources, the best possible learning experiences, and all the information they need to potentially solve problems. I think we can all agree ChatGPT certainly represents all of that. There's some ethical implications to this, as we see, right? There's a right way and a wrong way to use this. There's a right time and a wrong time to use this type of technology. And we don't want to keep the ethical implications of something like this at an arm's length. We want to embrace this. We want to partner with our adults, partner with our families around helping our kids understand the ethical implications of using this the right way and the wrong way. And some of our kids are going to make some mistakes. Some of our kids will try to pass off bot-generated language as their essay. We want them to do that when they're here under our care, so we can support them and have those teachable moment conversations. We know when they go off to college and they try to do that, they're going to have already learned that lesson, because otherwise they might be coming home and suspended from school. The consequences are pretty significant. So we use this. We think this is an opportunity to help our kids learn the important ethical implications of this technology. And then lastly, this isn't a driver for us by any stretch, but effectiveness. We could block ChatGPT tomorrow and it's not going to work. The kids will have access to it. They'll be able to utilize it. There are ChatGPT is the primary one. There are hundreds of other artificially generative AI based tools that kids are getting access to. So what does this mean for us? The implications are kind of hard to wrap our heads around. Certainly we need to think in terms of assessing, revising assessments. I think this is going to be a healthy reminder for us, a healthy reminder for schools, speaking generally. Correct answers are never as valuable as problem-solving skills. Correct answers are never as valuable as critical thinking skills. And this is going to help provide some shortcuts to some correct answers for kids, but it's not going to replace problem-solving skills. It's not going to replace the critical thinking that we know benefits our kids when they leave us. We are going to need to start embracing a more performance-based approach to assessment here and there. So let's value what we can see and directly observe our kids doing. Something like a conversation could be a valid form of assessment. A kid working out a problem on a whiteboard and being able to explain exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it. That's a valid form of assessment. So we need to start looking for ways in which we can embrace that. We are actively looking for tools. There are plenty of free tools, but we're kind of vetting those right now that will support plagiarism detection. So there are AI tools that will give a mathematical rating around how likely it was a 500-word essay was bot-generated versus human-generated. So we're looking at that. That's going to be a thing that's going to need to be on our radar. And certainly, we talked about the framing and helping frame and organize our thinking. We'll continue to have lots of dialogue around how this can benefit us, how we can squeeze every bit of value possible from this tool. In terms of language and policy, again, I'll steal a phrase of Ross's. We need to collectively learn first. We need to take the time to understand the implications of this. We'll get to a point where we're changing some words in a handbook and recommending some language in course syllabus and potentially board policy down the road. There's lots of districts that are wading through that. So we'll wade through that too. But we'll take our time and we'll get it right, and we'll spend some time learning what the implications are before we start throwing words down right away. So certainly more to come on that. In terms of recommendations, I would recommend every one of you check this out for yourself. Give it a try. Again, kind of seeing is believing. I'll kind of end on the same slide I started with. If you're interested in giving it a try, there is an app for it for your phone. So you go to the Apple Store or Android Store, you can download it. It is free. That is the URL. If you want to go to and register for an account, again, it's going to cost you your email address and a cell phone number. But it is groundbreaking to say the least, and something we need to start leaning into and considering as a tool our kids have, and how can we leverage this to take best possible advantage. So without further ado, I'll pause. If there's any questions, I'm here to help, here to answer.
One of the really neat applications I found from it is it makes complex texts available for kids who might not be able to access them. Just to see what would happen, I asked it to rewrite the Declaration of Independence at a 5th grade level. And it made that tag, it put the first paragraph and then the generated paragraph beneath it, and it made that text available for some of our special ed students.
Yeah. That's one of the things we played around a little bit in a workshop earlier. You could just take complex concepts, explain the concept of, say, something like a chemical catalyst, and explain it at an expert level, an intermediate level, beginner level, as an opportunity to make sure every one of our kiddos, regardless of background knowledge, sitting in a high school chemistry classroom, can access the basic concept, and the teacher can push in terms of growth, moving beginners up to intermediate, intermediate up to expert, and we're not differentiating around what we're introducing to our kids in terms of standards. So.
And from the teacher perspective, it does the same thing. Please help me teach this standard at a 9th grade level and at a 5th grade level with the UDL focus. So, I mean, there's type it in, and there's all kinds of supports there.
And then the quirky piece of all this is this did not exist a year ago. This kind of broke ground November of 2022. So we're about 10 months into this thing. So it's evolving at quite a rate.
And this is the worst technology we're going to have the rest of our lives, if we kind of wrap our heads around that.
Good.
Imagine.
Anything else?
All right.
Thank you very
Pat,
much.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Create its own PowerPoint.
And actually, allow me a chance to be vulnerable here real quick. Oftentimes when, obviously you're here to make a statement, and I completely respect that. And oftentimes when people on this side of the table respond, there's cynicism or there's sarcasm implied. There's not. If you please just, the fact that you came here like you did is part of who Lorain is. We rally well around each other. So I truly appreciate it. I wrote on the shirts, we are where we are because of you. Unfortunately, the process of negotiations by design with intention is to be confrontational, it's to be negative, and it's to take much longer than it should. My personal opinion is we're not too far off. We'll get things figured out. I appreciate your patience, appreciate your leadership, and again, I appreciate the approach that you've taken to this, expressing your frustration in a way that is respectful, kind, and you have never once put the kids in the middle or families in the middle. You're just taking care of your own. So again, our own. I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate you. Okay, I would like the board to consider for approval item 9.01.
So moved. I'll support.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mrs. Zario.
Yes.
Ms. Washington.
No.
Mr. Ferguson.
Present.
I'd like the board to consider for approval items 9.02 to 9.08.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Washington.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Ms. Nazario.
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
And before I make my recommendation on the items for 10.01 to 10.17, 10.17 is a pretty big one for us. It's a relationship we recently established. We currently have 1,200 students in our district who don't have their vaccinations. And by law and by board policy, we have to exclude them from school very soon. We met with a group called QuickMed, and they're an urgent care unit. They've got 17 different buildings around the state. They do school-based health care too, hint. But what they're going to do is, and the big issues, the obstacles with getting vaccination, twofold. One, you have to go to the health department or the hospital, and our kids don't have access to that. And because of the way the vaccinations are, they only have a short stock on supply. So you can only do so many in a day. We have 1,200 kids. So we've got a big need. What they're going to do, and what this agreement does is allows us to go into a partnership with them. I think future contracts will be coming on board. But this allows them, they're going to gas up and put a driver behind our mobile clinic, and we're going to drive to the areas where students are, and they will buy vaccines in bulk to make sure kids get caught up quickly. They're going to make the calls, they're going to reach out. So if you hear about QuickMed, they're legit, they're here to help, and we're pretty excited to have them be on board. So I want to make sure I gave them the shout out they need, because without them, we're telling 1,200 students they can't come to school anymore. Okay, I'd like the board to consider for approval items 10.01 to 10.17.
Support. Support.
Wait a minute.
Hang on, who said?
I so moved. He supported.
Thank you.
Got it? Any discussion? Roll call.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Ms. Cesario.
Yes.
Ms. Washington.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Anything else? Do we have any new business to share? Any committee reports? Second hearing of the public? Okay, our next board meeting will be September 25th at 5 o'clock here in the board meeting room. We do have an executive session under A2 employment. We will not be taking any action coming out. So I need a motion to go into executive session.
So move.
Support. Roll call?
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Ms. Washington.
Yes.
Ms. Cesario.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Thank you.
I hope there's pizza.
Do you guys want this space? We can go down the hall.